I'll be sharing with you something that happened a couple of years ago, but still has the most profound effect on human life today. Nothing in the history of life has had such a profound effect to human history as what I'm going to share with you today. You see, it will bring fulfillment to you. It will bring blessing to you. It will bring joy to you. It will bring into your life what you have been looking for and searching for in all these other things, and you have not found. You see, so many people live through life searching for things to bring fulfillment, happiness, meaning to them, but they do not really grasp it. It's as if meaning to life is so elusive, it's so evasive, and it's because they have not come across reality that cannot be shaken, that is anchored in eternity. Now, that is what I want to share with you today. If you will pay close attention and allow the Spirit of God to apprehend you and to capture you, you'll enter into a realm that is unshakable, a realm that is anchored upon the foundations of eternity itself. And that is what I want to share with you today, that you may move away from things that are really fleeting. You have fun and joy in 1 second, in 2 minutes, in 1 day, and it passes away. Now, what I want you to connect with me today are things that are going to not only captivate you, but transform your life, elevate your life, and lift you up into realms that are eternal and secure. So this starts with nothing other than the birth of Jesus himself, the birth of Jesus Christ himself, the very Son of God, announced through the ages, through various prophets and prophecies across a whole span of life. Now, these are prophets that showed up on the scene in different areas during different time zones and different seasons, and yet they had a word. They had a prophecy that was concerning the coming of Jesus himself, the Son of God. And you see, this is how God does things. God uses prophetic messages as indicators, as signs, as means by which people may verify or may authenticate what he really wants to do, such that when it happens, you will know that God had already prepared you and had given the signs prior to its happening, so that you may not be confused. You may know that this indeed is what God was talking about. But you see, beyond the prophecies and beyond the fulfillment of it is the very reason as to why he was announcing that which he wanted to do. And you were the very reason he had in mind in the preparation of all this. You see, whatever God was doing, whatever God is doing, he has you in mind. It's about himself and you, this whole story about life. And so today, that is why I want to share with you, some of these things that I know once you connect with and once you connect to, will uplift you, will bring you before the very realms of God, for you to interact with God, for you to have, another level of living that is beyond that which you have known so far. So, like I said, he had to prepare mankind. He had to prepare the whole human race. By the whole human race, I mean those that would be living in the day in which Jesus was born, and those that will be living in the days after his birth, like you and me, so that we may see through these prophecies and know for sure that Jesus is Lord, that this is the very Son of God, whom God was preparing for us to receive, for the whole human race to receive. And again, he does this through prophecies that are given to prepare, to indicate as a sign for you to tell that this is indeed him. So we see, again, through Isaiah the prophet, one of the most direct prophecies that were given concerning the birth of Jesus. We see through Isaiah the prophet, Isaiah prophesying about how Jesus, this Jesus, the Son of God, would be born through a virgin. He said a virgin would conceive. That is in Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. And that is one of the most profound and direct prophecies, because you see, that is something that would be unnatural. So if you see a virgin conceiving, then you know that this is one of the signs that you would be able to tell that this child is indeed special. This is not one of the many that are being born into the earth. This is one who has been born of God himself. This is this very Son of God. So he says as a virgin would conceive. Another, direct prophecy that was prophesied before was prophesied by a prophet known as Micah, Prophet Micah. That is in Micah chapter 5, verse 2. He prophesies the very region, the very place, the very area where this child would be born. He's zeroing in. You see, all these prophecies are to zero in, to identify this child born from heaven, born of heaven itself. So Micah chapter 5 verse 2 says that this Son of God would be born in Bethlehem. In Bethlehem. So again, these prophecies across the span of time are prophesying and indicating through their prophecies, the various places, the place, the time zones, the circumstances surrounding, the birth of Jesus, the very Son of God, such that the world may know and prepare, you see, for him, because he would bring upliftment, to the whole human race. He would bring enlightenment, true enlightenment to the whole human race. He would bring true hope, true faith to the whole human race. So Micah prophesies again, about his, the location in which he would be born, and that is Bethlehem. And then we go to, various other prophets, some of whom their prophecies were not as clear and as, direct. But if you understand prophetic language, you would know, you would see that indeed this is that which had been prophesied. We look through Numbers chapter 24 verse 17. I want to read you a prophecy that is indeed one of these that might not be as direct, but by the spirit of prophecy, you understand that this is what was being talked about. Numbers chapter 24 verse 17, you will read verse 17. It says, I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. Now notice what it says. I want you to pay very close attention to what he says here. There shall come a star out of Jacob. It says, there shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter. Notice it says, there shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and shall destroy all the children of Sheth. Now, people who are unlearned and are undiscerning, pertaining to the things of, concerning the things of prophecy, and are not in touch as far as interpreting and understanding prophetically, this will come in a language that is ambiguous. But some of us who have got the spirit of prophecy and who prophesy, we understand and we know that there are certain prophecies which once given, you may not have a very close, association or relation to the things that you are saying or seeing. But when it comes to pass, you will know that this is indeed what God was talking about. Now, I want you to see the fulfillment of this prophecy in Matthew chapter 2. We'll go to Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. It says, now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, and he says in verse 2, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? Then notice what it says as a fulfillment of this. For we have seen his star. It says, for we have seen his star in the east, and I'll come to worship him. You notice it was prophesied in Numbers that a star shall arise, and then he personifies this star. And now here we see the Magi from the east, popularly known as the wise men from the east, saying, we have seen his star. Now again, I want to read you again for you to see and understand something very small here. Go back again to Numbers chapter 24. We'll go to verse 17 again. It says, I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob. It says, there shall come a star. Now, if you are, again, for those who are unlearned and ignorant about prophetic revelation, they will say, he's talking about a star. But notice what it says about this star. And a scepter shall arise out of Israel and shall smite the corners of Moab and destroy all the children of, it's talking about this star, all the children of Seth. And then the Magi, in again Matthew chapter 2, as a fulfillment of this prophecy, they see this star. It says, where is he that we have come to worship, the King of the Jews? For we have seen his star. So this is the star. And there's a mystery in there that I do not have the time, and that is beyond the scope of what I'm trying to share with you. But we're talking about his star, Jesus' star, arose, and they beheld it. And we will not go into some of those mysteries today. So that is, again, a prophecy that is prophesying not in very direct terms, again, but by the spirit of prophecy, you will know that this is exactly, when it comes to pass, what was being prophesied. I remember a couple of years ago when I had just started stepping into the office of the prophet by the Spirit of God. I remember once having prophetic revelations, 3 prophetic revelations in one particular night, and one of them which particularly caught my attention was because it had certain details that moved me and shook me, was one that had to do with great devastation, great loss of lives, and because it had a time given to it, I waited patiently and anxiously for it. This prophetic revelation, I remember, was given to me in September, I believe it was 2004. And it was about, again, 3 different prophetic, revelations. But this one I had to wait for it because, again, it had a date to it. And the Spirit of God, if I remember well, had given to me that it would happen in the days after Christmas on the 26th of December. And so I had to wait and see, what is this that is going to happen, and it's going to catch the whole attention of the world, and, massive loss of lives, and, all this. And you see, that's how some of these prophecies come to you, and you don't know exactly, what is being given to you. You have nothing to associate it with, to relate it with, but you know that it has been given to you in such, like what one of the scriptures says, we know in part and prophesy in part, but when that which is complete has come, then we will know it. You see? So it comes to you, and then you do not know what to connect it with, what to associate it with, but you know that this is it. You see? So I remember I forgot, when it was, Christmas time, after Christmas, I forgot. And then I think I woke up, if I remember well, I think it was in the late hours of Boxing Day after Christmas, on the 26th. And I turned on the television, and there was this news, everywhere, about this massive, tsunami. I think that was the 2004 tsunami that had hit, the various coasts, in the world, and masses and masses of people had lost their lives. And then all of a sudden, it dawned on me, this is exactly what the Spirit of God was showing to me, was revealing to me. Now, I've had quite a number of prophecies which come like that, and when they are revealed to you by prophetic revelation, you do not exactly know what it is all about, and when it starts unfolding, you can clearly tell that this is that. So this is what was happening. Another prophecy is given in, again concerning Jesus' birth, in Psalms chapter 72, I believe it's verse 10 and 11. We will read it, Psalm 72, verse 10 and 11, and it says, "The kings of Tarshish and of the isles shall bring presents." Now you see how prophecy comes, and how if you are really not spiritual, you will really miss it. It says, "The kings of Tarshish and of the isles shall bring presents. The kings of Sheba and Sheba shall offer gifts. Yea, all kings shall fall down before him." Speaking about now in context how a worship shall happen. "Yea, all kings shall fall down before him, all nations shall serve him." Now go to Matthew chapter 2 again, verse 11. Matthew chapter 2, verse 11, and you see how this is fulfilled, prophetically. Matthew 2, verse 11. He says, we read from verse 10. "When they saw the star," these are the kings of the east, the Magi. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. Now notice what verse 11 says. "And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him." You remember the prophecy? "And when they had opened their treasures," you remember the prophecy talking about how they shall bring their gifts? "They presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh." Now, even the very presentation of offering gifts to this child, this special child that is born of God, is also prophesied, such that when it happens again, you can track everything and know, okay, when this child was born, where, the kings of the east, did they come? Did they offer these gifts? Did they bow down and worship? Now, that's what it says. They presented gifts of what? Unto him, of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And remember, their intention, they said they had come down, they said we have come to worship him. So they worshipped him. So this is, again, a prophetic revelation that is given for you to identify this special child. Not everyone is born, who is born has a myriad of prophecies, for people to look through and be able to identify that this indeed, when you were born, how many prophecies were prophesied about you, to identify that when you are coming into this world, the world might know and receive you in such a special way. But you see, these are given to indicate, the ministry of Jesus, the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, the Christ, so that people may again be able to recognize him and may be able to know the authenticity of this special child, the validity, because surrounding him or around him, revolves the very essence of what life is. It's joy, the peace, fulfillment, meaning. So you've got to really not miss it here, you see. And that's why God had to, send various prophets to, highlight this. And then we see Jeremiah himself. Again, Jeremiah in Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 15, also prophesying. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 15. This is what he says. Thus says the Lord, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel weeping for her children, refused to be comforted for her children because they were not. Now again, you hear a prophecy like this. This is some of those prophecies which once given, people will wonder, so what is this all about, And it seems vague, it seems general, but when it comes to pass, you know that this is exactly what it was talking about. Let us look at the fulfillment of it. In Matthew chapter 2, you read from verse 16. Matthew chapter 2, verse 16. It says, then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked, of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coasts thereof, from 2 years and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. Now notice verse 17. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, in Ramah, you remember? In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and will not be comforted because they are not. So again, I don't have the time to go through prophecy after prophecy after prophecy. We've seen again the very direct ones. Isaiah 7:14 speaking about, the virgin birth, conception and birth, And then we go through, Micah 5:2, very direct, his location. And then all these other prophecies that, once they are fulfilled, you clearly see that this is the Christ. This is the child, the Christ, from God himself. God himself being born into this world for the redemption of mankind. Now you see the attention that is placed upon Jesus. It is for you to get from it what God intended for you to get from it. And that is why you shouldn't take him lightly. In other words, you shouldn't take all these things lightly because it's in them that you will find true meaning, that you'll find, your anchorment, where you'll be anchored with God, in eternity, where you'll find things that last beyond the span of time. It is from this that you will get, everything that is alive and well and transcendent and eternal and immortal, where darkness is destroyed. It is from these things. And so we know that he came and he was born a son of man. He was born a son of man, that you may be born a son of God. He was born a son of man, that you may be born again a son of God. I want you to understand this, because that's why we're talking about, eternity coming into time, such that time might come into eternity. John chapter 1 verse 12. There's so many things I would share with you. John chapter 1 verse 12. John chapter 1, we'll read from verse 11, I believe. It says, speaking of Jesus again, it says, he came unto his own, and his own received him not. Then he says, but as many as received him, to them he gave power to become sons of God. You see, he is God himself, the Son of God himself, becoming a son of man, that you might become a son of God. You, a son of man, might become a son of God. He is bringing you out from the realms of time and space and flesh and the physical into the realms of the spirit, into the heavenly realms. In other words, he's translating your existence from mere human existence to heaven existence, heaven interaction, heaven heritage. And now, not in eternity. Again, he says, but as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. Now notice again what I've been talking about. Which were born not of flesh. It says that you cease to become one who is merely born of flesh, not of the will of the flesh. Which were born not of blood, not of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God himself. Now you see how powerful this is, And this is what actually happens. This is reality itself. It says, you cease to become a son of man, a mere son of man, and you become a child of God. It says, flesh and blood no longer define you. You're no longer defined or confined by flesh and blood. In other words, your existence, your reality, your very essence is translated from flesh and blood, and you become a peculiar being on earth. You become a child of God, a son of God, which were born not of blood, not of the will of the flesh, not of the will of man, but of God. Dogs give birth to dogs. Goats give birth to goats. Humans give birth to humans. What does God give birth to? Now you see, when you get these things, when you understand them, your existence changes, your reality changes. Your reality now starts to transcend the things that humans are confined to. You're brought into the very realms that, humanly speaking, are impossible, are transcendent, are limitless. And that becomes you. So no longer should you be held by, the bondages that hold natural man. It says no longer should you be held by the bondages that hold human life. No longer should you be held by the bondages that hold human life. So again, he became a son of man, that you may become a son of God himself, that you may become children of God, or the sons of God. He was born into our world. He was brought into our world, that we may be brought or be taken into his very world. This is what was happening. This was the significance of the coming of Jesus in the realm of man, to translate man, to transform man from his lowly existence to a heavenly one. He was brought into our realm, that we may be brought into, or taken over into his very realm, into his very existence, into his very heavenly realms, his very heavenly existence. Again, these are things that are powerful, they are actual, they're things you can actually see and interact with. Now, in other words, you can say it this way, that his coming was to once again make you alive, not only to the realm in which you happen to find yourself in, the physical realm, but to make you alive, that you appear once again in the heavenlies, and you are alive also towards, or to the heavenlies, or in the heavenlies. You are alive to the spirit realm. Your existence transcends what is earthly, but you're made alive also in the heavenlies. There are people who live and their reality is only what they see, feel, taste, touch, and smell. 5 senses is only restricted and limited to that. But you see, the coming of Jesus is to usher you beyond your mere physical existence. He was brought into this physical, earthly existence that he might bring you, he may usher you to a heavenly one, a spiritual one, that you may be made alive there. And there are people again who are not alive spiritually. They are not awakened spiritually. Some are alive spiritually, but are not yet awakened. Some need to be made alive if they are unbelievers, if they're not born again. And then there are those who need to be, awakened spiritually, that they may be awake to spiritual realities, that they may see them and interact. There's a spiritual world, there's a physical world, and the spiritual world is more vast than the physical world. So the coming of Jesus, for it to be relevant, for it to be meaningful, these things ought to happen to you. Now, in other words, you ought to see an existence that transcends your earthly one, because that's why he came. He didn't come to just show up and give us, some history and give us a Christmas holiday and give us all these things. He came for something that was more profound. He came to increase our reality, to expand our reality, to extend it, to anchor it to eternity itself, that we may be alive unto God. He came to give us much more than a religion. He came that we may interact with the heavenlies. So when you understand this and you understand how to connect with his coming, with his birth, then you see how significant it is. Then you can celebrate it. Because you start to now see things for what they truly are. You do not know reality if your reality is only, restricted to the physical, to the earthly. You are all people to be pitied if that is all that you know to be real. So he came for this. And we need again to be, for some need to be made alive to it. Others need to be awakened. Those are two, different things that I do not know that we have the time to, move into some of them. But I'll give you some of the keys of how this happens. You see, let's first go to John chapter 3. John chapter 3, talking about this. It says, there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. He was a religious man, religious men as well are known as rulers. He says, the same came to Jesus by night and said unto him, Rabbi, we know that thou art a teacher come from God. For no man can do these miracles that you do except God be with him. Now, Jesus knew exactly where this man was getting to, of course, by prophetically, you can see someone saying something and you know what exactly they really want, but they're beating about the bush. So Jesus just, interjected, and Jesus, before this man even asked the question, Jesus answered, verse 3, and said unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. He is dead. His reality is only the kingdom of man, the reality of man, the rulership of man. His reality is only that. He only sees man here, man here, man here. Man becomes his help. Man becomes his fear. Man becomes his source. Man becomes his, his doctor, his physician. Man becomes his, ruler. Man. He sees man in everything. He sees only physical realities. Then Jesus tells this guy that I came, in effect, he's telling him this, I came to awaken people to something, a reality that is beyond the perception of man. But he says, unless what he calls you are born again, spiritually. I was born into this world, that you may be born again into my world. So unless you are born again into his world, you can't see it, because your birth has been of this earth, of this reality. You need to be born now into that other world, the world in which he came to usher you into. This is, you can't see it. He says religion can't show it to you. He is a religious leader, a leader. He says a ruler of the people. And he was not able, he couldn't see the things of God. He couldn't see spirit, just like some of us. It didn't take us theological schools, seminaries, and all that, to be able to see the things that we see in the spirit, spiritually. He says this only is, can only be made possible by what he calls the new birth, being born again. There are too many things that we can't get into here. He says, Jesus answered and said unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. He will laugh at you if you talk about the kingdom of God. Say, where is it? They will laugh at you. They will mock you. They don't get it because they can't. He says he can't. No, you can't reason it out. You can't make it rational. You can't. It's impossible. 1 Corinthians 2:14, it says, but the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God. It says, neither can he know them. It says, the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God. Neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14. Now, if your spirit is not hasn't been birthed again, been alive again unto God, unto the kingdom of God, you can't. He says it's impossible. That world is closed to you. And it's understandable that you move in doubt and unbelief, and you're a mocker and you're a scoffer. It's understandable. We understand you perfectly well because we know it's impossible for you to say these things. It's impossible. It's not possible unless you are born again. So anyway, Nicodemus said unto him, how can a man? You see, that's how religion it's confuses people and it's confused itself. It says, how can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter the second time into his mother's womb and be born? You see, spiritual things are spiritually discerned. Jesus answered, verily, verily, I say unto you, except a man be born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter. He can't have entrance. He can't have access to the things of God, to the kingdom of God, to the reign of God, to the dominion of. He says he can't have access to it. Then he says, that which is born of flesh is flesh. Yes, at some point you were born of flesh and flesh. And that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. Marvel not that I said unto you, ye must be born again. Then he says, the wind bloweth where it listeth, and thou hearest the sound thereof, but cannot tell whence it cometh and where it goeth. So is everyone that is born of the Spirit. So he's telling this man, and this man is getting more and more confused apparently. Because he's speaking about, you really cannot understand, this whole born again thing. It says, because when you're talking about it, you're talking about a world that transcends the empirical, a world that transcends the flesh, a world that transcends mathematics, science. And you see, that is where, when we talk about all these things, and then you see someone trying to figure out spirituality using scientific means, it's a marvel by itself. And when you see again these things, and then you see in the past couple of years, during the time when this whole pandemic, so-called pandemic thing had hit the world, you realize how foolish people can get. When they, again started trying to subject spirituality to that which is carnal and natural. You try to subject what is spiritual. And that's what Nicodemus is trying to do. Can a man again enter into his mother's womb? Again, an old man again be born again? Then it says, it's like the wind. You can't understand. You don't know where it's coming from. You don't know where it's going. Then you hear this so-called, follow the science, and then they're trying to, bring lockdowns to the church. A spiritual entity, people trying to regulate it. You can't regulate from the earthly realm something that transcends what is physical and earthly. But when you see and hear all these things, you understand how man has indeed fallen and how people like those are, whether conscious or unconscious of what is happening, they're actually being controlled by demonic spirits that intend to keep people in bondage, in darkness, intend to keep people from actually truly entering the kingdom of God. Keep them in the flesh, keep them in science, what they call science. This is spiritual. This is something that transcends anything that can be figured out, that can be calculated, that can be regulated, this is spiritual. It can only be regulated by the Spirit of God. It can only be regulated spiritually. You cannot bring spiritual things and again try to, control them by physical things. Spiritual things control physical things, not the other way around. And, you understand why some people really don't see this, because again, they're not born again. They're not alive, or they're not yet alive in the Spirit. And those who are, the few who are, and yet cannot see, need to be awakened spiritually. And that is something that is beyond the scope of what I've been sent here today to deliver to you. And because we do not have the time right now, I want to pray with you and introduce you to the very reason Jesus, the one that I know more than I know anyone on this earth, came on this earth. The reason as to why he came. He came for you. He had you in mind. You may feel like no one thinks about you. No one truly feels you and understands you. He does. He actually does. And he longs to actually hold you Now, open your heart to him and take this step towards light that is eternal, glory that is eternal. You will remember this day for all eternity. This is the most important decision that you can make. Now I want you to confess these words with your heart and with your mind clear. And then you will see them translate your life from one level to another. And then you will realize throughout eternity how this is the most important decision that you have ever made. Now just say, Jesus. Say with me, say, Jesus, I give you my heart. I give you my soul. I give you my very being. I believe you are the Christ, the Messiah, the Savior, the Son of God. Be my Savior. Be my Christ. Be my salvation. I surrender all that I am to you. Take my life and make it what you want, what you have planned in eternity for me to become. Take my life and make it more meaningful to you and to the world and to myself. Take my entire being. I belong to you. You belong to me. Wash me in the blood that you shed for me on that cross. I believe that you died for me, that you rose for me. I believe that you are my Lord and my Savior. From today onwards, I belong to you. Amen. Now for the rest of you, in the name of Jesus, during this time, I pray in the name of Jesus that the hand of God comes upon you, that your life opens up more and more towards Him, that you begin to see the very depth of His plan that He has for you. I command everything that is negative and that is dark that has tried to hold you down, I command it to loose you today. And this Jesus heals diseases as well. If you have any sickness, in the name of Jesus, just touch where you have. You feel the pain or anywhere you touch. In the name of Jesus, I command that disease to pass out of your system, to be healed, be totally healed. Everything about you, in the name of Jesus, be made complete, be made whole, in the name of Jesus. Amen.
And we give God praise for the prophetic mantle on this man of God. Your only Son, no sin to hide, but you have brought him from your side to walk upon this guilty sod and to become the Lamb of God. Oh, Lamb of God, sweet Lamb of God, I love the holy Lamb of God. Wash me the Lamb of God, my Jesus Christ. You're